Good afternoon and welcome to the latest in our series of live career webinars brought to you by the HOP platform. So you can see the banners behind me. HOP stands for the Hertfordshire Opportunities Portal. It is a website for all young people, in fact any people specifically within Hertfordshire who want to find out some careers information. So it is full of loads of resources that you can find, lots of videos like the one that we're recording today, about a whole variety of different career topics. There's also all sorts of information about what the big careers are within your local area, in your local district within Hertfordshire, and there's even a jobs vacancy search on there. So there's something on there for everyone. So please do go and have a look at it. Have a look at some of our social media handles as well. Some of you may well be familiar with those. If you're not using them already, then please do. The purpose of these webinars is to give you the opportunity to hear from people, or hopefully, that's in the plural, who can talk to you about their experiences and knowledge of a particular area or a particular career, which hopefully will help inform you and inspire you when you're making your next very important career decision. So that's whether you're considering which GCSEs to take, whether you stay on at school's sixth form, take A-levels, move on to college, go on to university, or perhaps you're thinking even further afield than that and you're thinking about what your future career would be and you just want a bit more guidance and a bit more inspiration about that. So within this webinar today, we are going to be talking about careers in forensics. I've got a fantastic panelist for you who is going to talk about and share his experiences and knowledge with you. Just so that you know, I'm hoping that we will have a second panelist who will be the one that you've seen advertised, who's Vicky, who is our Scene of Crimes officer from Cambridgeshire Police. At the moment, she's having a challenge with her firewall on her IT system. The police force that she works for have got very strict firewalls, which I'm sure you can understand, that are preventing her from actually downloading this software. So she's working on that at the moment, hoping that she's gonna be able to join us throughout this session. But I'm also delighted that I've got a second panelist on with us today, Adam Lang. So Adam, would you like to introduce yourself to us all, please?
Yep, so I'm Adam Lang, so I'm the Curriculum Coordinator for Science and Public Services at West Herts College. So I oversee the Forensic Science pathway that we run, which is called our Forensic and Criminal Investigation courses. We also offer Forensic and Criminal Investigation with Psychology course as well. These are really popular pathways now that have gone up massively in interest in the last few years. So yeah, I manage that. I teach a little bit on the Forensics with Psychology as well. And I've got some previous experience working for the Metropolitan Police as a special constable. So I've worked closely with forensics officers in the past. So hopefully I'll be able to give some information about what they do.
Sure, thank you very much, Adam. So hopefully Vicky may be able to join us a little bit later. I mean, just say to Adam, you're from West Herts College, which, of course, well, explain to everyone where that campus is, first of all, because not everyone will know that.
Yeah, so we have two campuses at West Herts College. We also have our sort of partner college called Barnfield College, which is up in Luton. But at West Herts, we've got a campus in Watford, which is our main campus, but we also offer forensics courses at Hemel Hempstead as well. So we've got two campuses.
Sure, and if you don't live over that side of the county, be aware that the courses that Adam's going to talk to you about that West Herts College offer are available, very, very similar ones up at North Herts College, which is in Hitchin and Stevenage, and then Oaklands College out of Welwyn Garden City as well. And then if it's something that you're interested in at Hertford Regional College, which is down sort of Broxbourne, then there are psychology courses, and we'll talk about the difference between those. So Adam is very well versed. We will talk about the sorts of things that are covered within those courses. Appreciate some of you might be already in year 12 secondary school, might be considering your next options after that. So certainly Adam will tell you about what some of his students do and naturally their next steps, which might be more aligned to the sort of stage of your career journeys that you're on at the moment. So look, first of all, Adam, I'm going to ask you, and I haven't prepped you for this, so good luck with it. I'm going to just to define, what do we mean by forensics?
Yeah, so forensic science, I think everyone sort of probably assumes forensic science now based upon a lot of the TV shows they watch. They look at crime scene investigation. It's not just that on-scene investigating that a forensic officer may do. There's different roles as well. So you might be a forensic analyst or a forensic examiner. Of course, there are roles which hopefully if Vicky joins us, she'll be able to go through this, like what a scene of crime officer will do. They're very much involved in terms of like the preserving of evidence at the scene of a crime. But of course, there are, if people are interested in working in lab settings, those that can work in like forensic analysis where they're based in a lab and they might be, testing a substance gathered from scene to see what it is, or linking substances from particular scenes to a particular other piece of evidence, or to a particular crime. So yeah, there's lots of different roles. It's not just all those hands-on ones that you see on TV, where you perhaps see investigators wearing their PPE, their scene suits. There might also be some lab-based roles as well.
Okay, and then Adam, I mean, you said that you've got background actually working in the police. So just explain, what's the process between, you know, the police officers or police constables' role in a crime scene? So at what point did the forensics team then come and take over? So what's that sort of turnover like?
Yes, so we have, of course, whenever a crime's been committed, there's a phase, what we call the instigation phase of, you know, and then it goes what's sort of whether it's been reported. So a crime might be reported through different means. You know, it might be a member of the public calling up 999, or it might be that officers themselves have actually been witness to a scene taking place. At that point, there already might be a start to the investigation, what's called the initial investigation phase. There are different stages of that. So you can have things called like the golden hour, which hopefully Vicky can talk about in terms of like preserving evidence. But particularly if a scene is, if a crime's already taken place, the first thing to do would be to secure that scene. So to check for hazards, to ensure that there's no risk of life at scene or anything like that, or if you try to preserve life, if there is a member of some member of the public who's in trouble. And then from there, it's all about trying to secure that scene. So police constables might do things like, you know, you might see on TV, like securing a cordon, checking for those risks on scene. And then at that point, they just want to leave that evidence as it is, because you don't want to tamper with it or contaminate it at all. So and then you want to get forensics in as soon as possible, scenes of crime officers, to try and ascertain from their knowledge what's taking place.
Sure. So is there a desired time frame that you would want your forensics to be on scenes? Let's just take, for example, there's a road collision and forensics are coming in to do that. How much time would you generally have to try and prepare, or until forensics are going to come in and take over?
Well, of course, the simple answer is as soon as possible. Now, it is always a big depends on the actual scene, but with a road traffic collision, of course, you've also got things like road closures and things like that. Of course, you need to give forensics the time to do whatever they need to do as well, and make sure that the investigation is thorough. So, you know, there's no point that they're going to be rushed or anything like that. You need to ensure that all the evidence is secured, and there's all sorts of ways that they can do that. So it might be, you know, obviously preserving that evidence by taking it from scene and carefully securing it. It might be the case that, you know, there's a use of forensic photography is involved, but it all depends on the type of investigation that takes place. I know with like forensic fire investigations, there can be slight differences as well, which hopefully if Vicky, if she joins us, we'll be able to go through.
Sure. Okay. I mean, in your role as a police officer, were the forensics team always really revered? Were they people that you really looked up to and thought, like, wow, these guys are really the business here?
They were quite handy to help with our investigations. So, like, for example, like those that were based in lab settings and you wanted to send something off, obviously it was handy to have, you know, that result come back every now and then if you've, you know, secured a conviction and the evidence that you sent off was, you know, found to be the substance that was suspected or something like that. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's always interesting. I think a lot of people are always sort of interested in what scenes of crime officers will do on scene. Personally, myself, like I said, I was a special constable, so I was sort of mostly doing frontline policing roles. So trying to stop the crime happening or responding to the crime immediately. And then obviously it's that aftermath of the investigations, which, you know, I very nearly went down a detective route myself. I was very much interested in that, which a lot of people who do our forensics courses want to go down. And of course, those sort of detectives will work closely with forensics and what they do. But that is, of course, one of the opportunities that people can go down if they decide to do a career in forensics as well.
Sure. Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit more about the courses that you offer and what those courses actually look like. And I know, again, a number of people will be watching this thinking, well, actually, I want to know, have I got to go to college or can I stay at school and, you know, end up in the same location? So tell us a little bit about the courses that you offer at West Herts College, and say, just to reiterate the stuff. We know that Oaklands College and North Herts College offer very similar, if not exactly the same courses. So hopefully you're all within sort of commutable distance of one of these.
Yeah, so of course, you know, someone who's looking at, you know, maybe a year 11 student now who's thinking as a school leaver, what do I do next year? There are different options. You don't necessarily have to come to an FE college, but of course, if you are set on wanting to study forensic science, then I would suggest that you probably do a forensic science course. Now, we would offer typically what's called a level 3 program. So we only offer it at level 3 as forensics. So a level 3 program, essentially, those that don't know, is the equivalent of A levels. So by the end of what's called an extended diploma, you get the equivalent of 3 A levels in UCAS points, depending on your final grade. We do an extended diploma in what's called forensic and criminal investigation, which is essentially forensic science. Or there is the other pathway, which is the national diploma in forensic and criminal investigation, which is the equivalent of 2 A levels, and that's combined with what's called an extended certificate in applied psychology, which is the equivalent of 1. So if you take that pathway, you're still getting the equivalent of 3 A levels at the end of it. So we have a lot of students that want to do forensics with psychology, or they just want to do forensics by itself. And it's all just dependent on what kind of pathway they want to go down. If a student maybe wanted to do forensics at an FE college but didn't quite have the grade criteria to get onto a level 3 course, we would recommend that they do an applied science course to begin with at level 2, which is kind of like GCSE level. And on that, we would do modules. They do a module called investigating a crime scene. It's building up that core set of skills that they would need for the level 3 course anyway. So there are opportunities there for people to study forensics, even if they don't match or don't quite get the grades they were hoping for to study a level 3. Of course, if someone wanted to stay at school and do A levels, then I would probably recommend just look at the universities early. Because if you want to undertake a career in forensics, it is likely that you would need to go to university. You don't have to, but the sort of how it's going, current trends are most applicants for forensic roles have got a degree behind them. So we would recommend that students go down that pathway. If you were to do A levels to get to university on a forensics course, most universities would ask for at least 1 science subject, preferably 2. But if you've only got 1, they would normally like it with maths. So I would recommend that you would at least have those as your sort of A level subjects.
Sure. Okay, right. My dashboard is telling me that Vicky is with us, but she might only be with us by audio. So Vicky, if you can hear us, say hello now. No, it doesn't sound like it. My dashboard is telling me she's here, so hopefully we'll at least hear from, not see Vicky very soon. So Adam, just tell us a little bit, what are the units that you cover on the course?
Yeah, so in terms of forensic and criminal investigation by itself, there is the still core science element to it. And I would always say to any students that want to go down a career in forensics that as part of their studies, they are still going to have to study what is essentially applied science. So if they're not a big fan of science as a subject at school, then they need to be aware of that. There is still an element of biology, physics and chemistry that they study with us. They study aspects of what's called criminology. We do what's called forensic investigation procedures, which is very much the hands-on stuff that Vicky hopefully can go through. And then we've got the what's called criminal investigation procedures. So that's understanding the law and the criminal legal system. So from like the point of taking a case from crime scene to court, what are the processes that investigators will follow. So that's more away from the forensics and more looking at the criminal investigation part. We also just on the forensics extended diploma, do things like forensic fire investigation, and we do forensic photography as well.
Okay, and that's a 2-year or a 3-year course?
Yeah, so all level 3s are 2-year courses. And then, like I said, if someone wanted to do a level 2 course with us, which is like just the applied science, which is a stepping stone onto the forensics, that would only be 1 year.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. I can see that there's a few questions that have started to come in already. I didn't say that. So if you want to submit any questions to Adam, so anything that you want to know a little bit more about, please do. We will get through your questions. I promise. If you type that question in, the way that you do that is on your questions tab. It will pull out a text box. You can type in there. It's only visible to me, and then I will relay that question on. So yeah, any questions you want to ask, we will do. In fact, there was a question that came in, and it was related to the subject. So let me just pull that one out, Adam, and see what you think about that. So could I go into a career in forensics by doing a degree apprenticeship in laboratory science? What would be your thoughts about that?
I haven't had any students of mine go into that, but that is something. What I would suggest a lot of these degree apprenticeships is if students look at, there's a very good website called Prospect, which will go through and tell prospective students if that course is eligible for the career pathway they want to go down. Most science students of ours, or forensic science students of ours, if they're going to do a degree, they'll do like a forensic science or a biological science as well. So I wouldn't say no to that, but I'm not too sure. I would just, again, if it's something, if you're looking at university degrees further down the line, it's just looking early to see, right, will they accept that? And just speaking with them directly rather than looking on the website. Sometimes it's easier just to contact them directly and find out. But yeah, I'm not actually entirely sure on that one, I'll be honest.
Okay. So does the course cover digital forensics, or is there a different course for this?
It's a good question. It was something I was going to come to later on. Yeah, no, digital forensics is very much a trend that is a very current trend that we're looking to explore further in terms of our education. Now, it is touched upon in certain units. We don't have a dedicated module to digital forensics at the moment, but it is something that is referred to in sort of units regarding criminal investigations and forensic investigation procedures. So yes, although it's not something which is at the minute its own module, it is in terms of where we can relate it to certain processes, we do sort of talk about it.
Sure, okay. Another subject related question. So could I go into forensics after a degree in chemistry? I mean, how much application of chemistry would there be certainly within the courses that you offer and to a higher education level?
Yeah, so typically the answer to can I go into forensics career with a degree in chemistry, the answer to that is normally yes. So the desirable subjects that universities will tend to take are forensic science, biological science, chemistry, criminology and psychology as well. Now, like I said, with a lot of these forensics courses that FE colleges like ours run, there is that core element of science in there, and there is probably just as much lab based lessons as there are classroom based learning and practical based learning. So yeah, we do quite a lot of chemistry teaching, and there are exam units as well as assessment based units on those.
Sure, okay. You said that your the National Diploma Plus Psychology was a really popular course at West Herts. I'm sure that would be the same at the other courses as well. So how competitive is it to get onto forensic science and forensic and criminal course at West Herts? And are there tips that you would give people when they were applying, you know, apart from what qualifications or grades they get at GCSE? Are there other things that might stand out for you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously having a base knowledge of little things, so whether it's whether their core science knowledge that they've got at school, or it might be the case that they've undertaken any sort of like extracurricular activities regarding sort of law and legislation, that can be useful when we're doing our criminal investigation courses. With the psychology course, I know not all schools will offer psychology as a GCSE subject, some do. That is desirable, but it's not essential. What we normally look for in terms of entry requirements are 4 4s and above. So they should include English, maths and science. I would be honest and say that the science and the English is the really important part. Although obviously with how competitive it can be, you know, if a student hasn't got maths, then that might set them back a little bit. But the most important ones to me when I make my decisions for accepting students is normally 4 4s and above, and making sure that they've got English, maths and science. If they've got lots of subjects above a 4 but the maths is a 3, we might look at it on like a probation basis and see how they get on. If that's the case though, then we can always drop them down to level 2 for a year to secure that maths whilst they're with us. But yeah, I would say that English is vitally important just as much as the sciences, just because of when you study at level 3, it's the equivalent A level. When you go into university, the level of academic writing really takes a step up.
Yeah, okay. Well, that was my question I was going to ask. I said we're naturally thinking about science subjects and their alignment to this sort of career, and you just mentioned English there, and I guess there is a big onus on, you know, that writing capability and communicating in written form. Is that something that often surprises your students?
Yeah, I mean, of course, the way the world's working, it's less pen and paper these days and more online on on laptops and computers. But of course, yeah, where we sit as an FE college is we're trying to get learners ready for university, and we are that sort of stepping stone between school and university. So we are really trying to develop writing skills and sort of even like research skills. So quite often our courses as well, like on the psychology pathway, there is a psychological a research unit that they study into their own chosen psychological topic, and it's very much designed to be like an academic piece of work, like almost like a mini dissertation that they would do at uni, and it's getting them prepared for that. So yeah, the English is crucial, because from day one they're going to need to be able to confidently sort of analyze their findings, evaluate how they maybe process the crime scene or anything like that.
Yeah, okay. So the question that's come in here, we kind of talked around this, but just give me your thoughts on it anyway. If I want to stay at sixth form, what A levels are ideal for applying to a forensic role course at university? So what would you suggest?
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, I would recommend having some science in there, and potentially maths. Now, if you haven't got maths, then I would recommend probably go down 2 sciences if you can. Have a little look early though. Look at what the universities are accepting. They might state specifically that they will only accept, certain subjects. If they don't, then obviously you can know in advance. But I would suggest also, if you're going to study a forensic science, you should still continue to study that of applied science at school. So yeah, have at least 1 or 2 of those science subjects in there. If you can have maths as well, that would be ideal. But yeah, that's what I'd suggest.
Sure, okay. And then do you have to have a minimum grade 4 in science if all your other results are 4s and above?
Again, that's another thing that we would look at. We would say it's desirable again, because what we don't want to do, so at an FE college like ours, although if students haven't achieved their English and maths and we put them on a program, we can they will still do that with us. We don't offer GCSE science, so students won't have that opportunity through the FE, through the college, to restudy their GCSE science. So obviously, we're just trying to think long term for students who are then looking to go into forensic roles. If they don't have that GCSE science with them, will it hold them back? So it is again one of those desirable things, and that's why we have it as an entry requirement.
Sure, okay. We've spoken about qualifications there and the sort of courses that you have, but I think particularly young people, when you're in schools and when we're in the school environment, we're always thinking about qualifications and grades. But of course, I'm sure you've been employed by various people as well, Adam. You'll know that sometimes it's those personality traits and qualities and attributes that will actually put you in even better stead than the qualifications you get. So are there any sort of general skills and attributes that you notice that some of your better students all have that set them up really nicely for a career in forensics?
Yeah, I mean, one big one we were talking about this. I had a class last week that we were doing sort of simulated crime scenes, and I was talking about the importance of communication actually in there. We did, so I had a sister group of learners who were doing a simulated crime scene, and they all had to take it in turns to be a lead investigator. And when they did that, they had to take it in turns to communicate with a small team of theirs in terms of how to secure, search, and preserve the evidence of a crime scene. So I would say communication is crucial. Like most FE courses, organisation is going to be massively important as well. And then there's a lot of other sort of competencies that police forces like Hertfordshire Constabulary will go through as well. You can go on their sort of core competencies on there, and if you want to go down a career in forensics, you can already start to see what kind of values they have and what's needed for that role. So yeah, just in the past, things like resilience was one that I was often had to speak about when I was in the police, because obviously it can be tough. It can be tough work dealing, as a senior crime officer or as a forensic officer. So you're going to need that resilience in there. You need to have good communication. You need to be well organised. I could go into all sorts of skills, but we're not here all day. But it's yeah, I would, especially with the applications, if students are going to apply for forensic roles in the future, is have a look at what these what competencies they require, and see what you can do now to sort of develop those.
Sure. Okay. I mean, that's a really interesting question that's come in here, and I guess you can answer this on behalf of being a police officer. And the question is, would you say that forensics is emotionally challenging? And if so, is there support in place for employees to deal with this? And I guess, Adam, if you just talk more generally about the support that I know that all police staff would get, because you are put into quite emotionally challenging situations, as whether you're a police officer or whether you're in forensics, I guess.
Yeah, of course, you can see all sorts of things as a forensics officer. So yeah, like all most job roles these days, there are employee assistance programs out there, and the support that maybe employees will need to deal with, you know, certain situations. I mean, I know a couple of friends of mine used to work in the police, and you know, I haven't spoken to them. I know some of the things that they may have seen, and I know some of the emotional support that they've received as well. Yes, it's normally well documented about how tough sometimes it can be to see these sorts of things that you might see as a forensic officer. But you know, you go through a lot of training, go through a lot of preparation, and then obviously there is also that support there needed if you want it afterwards. Or during.
Sure. Yeah, okay. But I've not really thought about that from the forensics point of view. Maybe I'm slightly conditioned by watching them on TV, where they seem got really emotionally blank, the forensic staff in there. But you are seeing, I guess, some pretty horrific things. So whether you're the police officer who's gone there as first point of contact, or whether you're the forensics that are coming in there in the aftermath of it, is that something that you know, your students at the level you work at them start to be prepared for? Is that something people consider?
So yeah, we're not too graphic with our crime scenes. We can get quite inventive with them when we do simulated crime scenes. We do have you know, sort of fake bodies that we use to deal with certain scenes, and you know, we have blood splats and stuff like that, but it's not actually really blood and that sort of thing. But I mean, even in the police, there's certain things they'll do to prepare individuals. I remember when I was in the police, in the Met Police, we had to do, part of our training, we did like a morgue visit as well. So just to kind of get used to certain things. So yeah, there's all sorts of support there. I mean, like I said, with our simulated crime scenes, obviously they're not real, but we try to make them as useful as possible to the students when they go into industry.
Yeah, okay. I want to steer away from the word sort of boring and dull, but most forensic scenes, do they tend to be quite graphic ones, or can they be? Can it sometimes be, you know, two cars have collided and you're looking at, I don't know, wing mirror substances?
It could be a whole range of things. Yeah, it all depends on what's needed for the investigation. So yeah, I think obviously we try to make things for our students a little bit more exciting, and we listen to the learner voice, and every year they want to do you know, a particular scene, or you know, whether it's a homicide, or you know, or anything like that. We I think the one we did last week was a meth lab gone wrong, I think we called it. So it was looking at that. So it was like a science teacher who had a you know, a meth lab, and it's exploded, and they were trying to ascertain some of the evidence from that. So yeah, some of the teachers get a little bit inventive with it, but yeah, it could be things like road traffic collisions as well. It can be all sorts.
Okay, that's the premise for Breaking Bad, isn't it, that you've just described there?
Yeah, I think that was the inspiration probably behind it.
Yeah, I'm sure. Question here, can you briefly explain how the forensic psychology course differs from the forensic science courses at university? And I guess a number of your students may be considering which of those two they want to go into.
So in terms of difference between our course and the university courses?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you take that question to start with, I mean, if you know the difference between what an HE course would look, the difference in forensic psychology and forensic science.
Yeah, of course, like our courses would be used as a stepping stone to university. Now, in terms of what they would do differently, I mean, with our course, with the forensic science and psychology, although most students are very interested in the psychology part that do that course, and the I suppose the understanding of the criminal mind behind the behaviour that might see, you know, from certain crime scenes, is actually still mostly the forensic and criminal investigation. So it's about 2/3 of that is forensics and 1/3 is psychology. There's no difference in terms of the weighting. So essentially it's 2 qualifications. It's what's called a National Diploma in Forensics and Extended Certificate in Psychology. They get the same UCAS points as they would if they just did forensics, if they get the same grades, that is. And typically the pathways tend to be the same in terms of what they want to do at university. What we find though is students will tend to go down the more likely to do psychology degrees if they do the psychology pathway, and from there they can go down all sorts of aspects of psychology. Some of them want to be, you know, criminals, you know, forensic psychologists, criminal psychologists. Some might go down sort of criminology down that route, whereas what we find is those that just do forensics typically tend to stay in more scientific roles. So yeah, like forensic officers, senior crime officers, that sort of thing.
Sure. Is there much crossover? So do police officers perhaps go down the detective route and then go into forensics, or is it very, very specialist from early on?
from people I know and people I'm saying, there's a little bit of a difference between sort of the criminal investigation side and the forensic side a little bit. So we have students that can go down, have gone down different pathways. I've got students that have gone down detective constable pathways and students that have gone down forensic pathways. I mean, it's possible long term if people wanted to, they could do, they might need to go to do different qualifications at university or have sort of more scientific experience if they wanted to go down the forensic pathway if they've started off as a detective. But yeah, there's different options there available if people want to, that people can go down.
Sure. Okay. Right. I'm hopeful. I've got Vicky in the background now.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Vicky.
Yay.
Hello.
Sorry, you can't see me. It might not be a bad thing.
Don't worry, we will cope with your voice. We're very pleased to have you here. We've got a lot of students who are watching this live at the moment, and Adam has manfully fielded so many questions about the courses that he offers at West Herts College and some of his experiences as a police officer. So look, Vicky, whilst we've got you, just explain to us what do you do what is your job title and what does an average day look like for you?
So my job title is a scene, I've even forgotten now, it's been a bad with this getting hooked up. So yeah, it's been one of them days, I'm afraid. So scenes of crime officer is my title, and an everyday occurrence is, I couldn't even give you a structure. It is different every day. A scenes of crime officer can be dealing with volume crime to then dealing with major crime. It just depends on our criminals on the day, I'm afraid.
Yeah. So I guess it is by nature then, Vicky. It's a very reactive and responsive role.
Absolutely. So we have shift patterns. So you'll have an early turn and a late turn. Early turn will start at 8 o'clock. So as soon as you come in at 8 o'clock, you'll look at a system that we use in the police called WebStorm, where incidents are reported through, and then officers will create what we class as a scenes of crime log or CPS log. And that will be because they have requested for our attendance. So we will view it, look at it, and then we'll get allocated a job. That's how it works.
Sure. Okay, Vicky, I'm going to throw some questions at you, Vicky, that have come in through the people watching this live at the moment. And I suppose, like, the first one, I'm sure you'll answer favourably. Would you say that a career in forensics is enjoyable and/or fulfilling?
I absolutely love this job. Because of the reasons of it being completely different every day. I actually did hear Adam a couple of moments ago, and I think one of your students asked, obviously in relation to what we see and support we get. Unfortunately, with the job that we do see some quite horrific things, but we also are there to provide a service for victims of crime, and that can be quite rewarding. So it is, for me personally, this job is brilliant. It is really, really good. Every day is different. You meet members of the public. You work alongside other services such as fire, ambulance, water rescue, loads of different services. So yeah, for me personally, being seen as a crime officer now for 6 years, yeah, it's thoroughly enjoyable. Yes, sometimes days are tough, but that you have more good days than bad days, if that makes sense.
For sure. Okay, look, we'll explore that a little bit further. Vicky, just tell everyone about your background. There's a few questions that have come in saying, do you have to become a regular police officer first and work your way through? But tell them your journey.
Okay, so actually I started off as a civilian investigator, which is called an assistant investigator, which basically is a police officer but without powers outside the force. So you have powers within the station whereby you interview suspects, interview victims, and sort of have your own crime type, etc. But it's all volume crime, nothing major crime. And that's how I got into it. I didn't need any qualifications in a sense of any police background when I came into that. I did, however, have a degree in forensics. which I do think is beneficial for the job that we do, but it's not essential. And then I joined Collisions. I was with them for a couple of years, and then moved to Scenes of Crime when it came open as available. Because you actually don't start off as a Scenes of Crime officer. I must stress that. We do a lot of presentations with schools where they think they're going to become a Scenes of Crime officer straight away. Unfortunately, it does not work like that. You will become a volume crime examiner. To start with, and that's kind of what you want to be looking for if you are actively looking for to join within the police, a volume crime officer, and it's pretty much says it in the title really. You will deal with all of volume crime that comes in. So volume crime stretches from burglary, dwells, criminal damage, theft of motor vehicles, and that kind of thing, and then you build up your skills and competencies within your volume crime sort of life in a sense, and then you become a Scenes of Crime officer when you've got more experience in that process.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then Vicky, again, just explain to everyone who you're employed by and how that all links together.
Yeah, of course. So I'm actually employed by Cambridgeshire Constabulary. However, I do work out of Hertfordshire Constabulary. So we're a tri-force. So that includes Cambridgeshire, Hertfordshire and Bedfordshire. So that means that as a Scenes of Crime officer, I could be in any 3 counties at any job. So you're not restricted and can't be restricted to just purely one area. You will have to go out due to resources, etc., and or depending on the type of crime, if it needs more resource, you may be likely working in Luton to then working up in Peterborough to then working down in Cheshunt. You just don't know where you're going to go.
Sure. Okay. There's a couple of questions here asking just to distinguish between what you might do when you're on the scene and then your colleagues who work in the labs, or do you do a bit of both? How does that work, and how do they get separated?
No, so so as a Scenes of Crime officer, you are purely there to attend a scene and gather evidence of what's available to you. Then what happens is we bring the evidence back to our stations, and then we process it to the areas of where it needs to go, depending on what recovery type you've done. So if you've recovered footwear, it will come back to the station, and then we'll send it off to the footwear department over in Kempston, and then they will do the categorizations on the what type of shoe it is, etc., etc. And then again with fingerprints, if we get fingerprints from a scene, we bring it back, process it, and then it gets sent up to HQ, which is our headquarters up in Welling, to the Fingerprint Bureau, and then they do all their work to identify and put it through the national database, etc. So we don't get involved in relation to the chemical lab, fingerprints, footwear, digital, that kind of thing. We just gather the evidence from the scene and help assist officers and give them advice on what's best and what we're going to help to achieve to either disprove or prove an offence.
Sure. Okay. So there's a question here, and Adam, you might be able to answer this one, but the question, if I'd like to be based in a lab, would I have to go through the police in order to obtain that job?
I actually know that. No, you don't. You don't have to become a police officer. You don't have to have any forms of police experience to go into the labs. I purely know that because a lot of our other Scenes of Crime officers and even volume crime officers have actually come from the labs. So we've got a couple of girls that have come from Eurofins. We've got a couple who have come from our actual chem lab at HQ. You don't need that police background. However, again, it probably is more beneficial. They would prefer entry requirement to have a degree in that purpose, because technically you are more in the expertise side of it, I suppose. So you need to have an understanding about the different chemical treatments that we use, etc.
Yeah, no, okay. And then there's a follow-up question is, what is the job title of the people who work in the labs?
Oh gosh, well, we call them technicians, but again, I mean, with the Fingerprint Bureau, they are actually called fingerprint experts because they get called up to court. But mainly they are just called technicians.
Yeah, okay. So they're likely to be called into court to give evidence. Is that something that you and your team do?
That is correct, yes. So we are called up to court quite a lot. Whether or not you'll go through with it is a different thing, because 9 times out of 10, a statement that we provide is enough for the prosecution and the defence. So we don't normally. We get called to court, but it might not necessarily be that we'll get cross-examined or anything like that.
Sure. Okay. And excuse this is coming across as a slightly morbid question, Vicky. It is my question, but
I was expecting it.
What would be your favourite type of case to work on? So if the phone rings now, or hopefully not now, but in 20 minutes' time, and you've been called out to a case, is there one that your eyes really light up and think, wow, this is going to be fascinating, or are equally the ones you think, I really don't want to do this type of job?
It's a really hard one because we get some really interesting things that kind of you come across all the time, and we have a saying in the office: every day is a school day here, because you come across things that you've never seen before. But I would definitely say I don't know if I can, but it is probably more so of the violent side. So obviously in relation, it's everyone knows, we've got quite a big gang culture in sort of Bedfordshire, Luton area, where, we've got a big thing about knife attacks, that kind of thing. Sometimes they're quite good to go to, because you're linking different people to the scene. Murders, obviously, of course, they're going to attract your attention, depending on what type. And again, I think it's more of you going to the scene and seeing what you can help achieve to assist in the investigation as well. That's kind of what you get excited for, is what you're going to find that can help, like I say, or prove or disprove. But yeah, there's quite a few things that I don't know if enjoy is the right word, but you do kind of get an excitement to go, because that's kind of what you want to do. And I think a lot of us in the scenes of crime, in our team, would probably say exactly the same. It's anything new as well that you've not come across. Obviously, that is exciting, because you think, oh, what's gonna be my challenge here, and how am I going to deal with this, etc. I suppose the complex crimes, of course, are always going to be the more exciting jobs, but burglaries and dwellings and things like that, it's quite nice to go to as well, because you actually meet some really, really lovely people. Unfortunately, they're victims of crime, but you meet members of the public that are just lovely, and that's quite nice as well. So yeah.
Sure. Okay. Questions are flooding in. I will try and give you a break for a breath in a minute, Vicky, but I think these are all mainly directed at you. So what is the type of crime that you come across the most?
Violence crime, so violence and drugs, obviously, and organised crime. Drugs and violence is an ingoing two-way thing with that kind of offence. So if you've got drug deals going wrong, there's a threat there to use violence used, and then there's a retaliation back. So knife crime is a very big thing at the moment, and one that we do attend very regular.
Sure. And do you personally always feel very safe? I mean, has the crime sort of been and gone, and you're in there in the aftermath, or are you ever any sort of personal risk?
No. So we basically, as a senior crime officer, when you get the job, you have to do a risk assessment before you go out to attendance. So we'll look at historical checks on the address, if we've got to go to the address. We'll look at the job itself. Are the offenders been apprehended? Are they in custody so that they're not likely to come back to the scene? And then also there's, in relation to complex crimes, there's most likely always going to be a scene guard on, so you're always joined by an officer, so you've got that safety net there, really, because
Sure.
we're not we don't have any protection in a sense of tasers or pepper spray or anything like that. We have quite a heavy torch, which we would use, to be fair, but I mean, and obviously you do have your stab proof vest as well, but yeah, I've never, in the 6 years that I've been here and in the many years that I've sort of worked along SOCO, with SOCO, and other of my colleagues, I've never known anyone come involved with an incident where they've been attacked.
Sure. Okay. And then how frequently are you called to a scene? I mean, do you have days where you just waiting for the phone to ring all day, or are you always dealing with a backlog?
Oh no, it's never quiet. Unfortunately, criminals don't work 9 till 5, I'm afraid. So you are literally, so you'll get jobs coming in through the night. So obviously, offences that have occurred through the night when everyone's in bed, tucked in bed, and then that's what you'll come to in the morning. And then throughout the day, like people coming back from holiday, people coming back from work, that that someone's burgled their house, etc., etc. So no. I can assure you now, it's very rare that we get to sit in the office with a cup of tea.
Yeah. Right. Adam, let me ask you a quick, because I've had a number of questions that have come in, the students saying, well, how do I get work experience? So first of all, on your course, is there any industry work placements that are covered within that? And then what would you recommend for someone who wants to get a bit more of a feel or a taste of this? And then Vicky, if you've got anything you want to add to that, then please come in off the back of it.
Yeah.
Yes, we don't have like a set like work placement that they have in terms of like other qualifications where they might have to do 2 days in placement and 3 days within college, but we do often try and find students opportunities that are going to be useful for their courses. So I mean, for example, this year we have we look at not just the forensic but the criminal investigation part. Vicky was talking earlier about going to court and understanding the processes of going to court and writing statements. We've had magistrates in this year, we've had Crown Court judges coming in this year as well to talk about the processes that students would need to follow if they were to go down that route in the future. We do often try and find as many sort of opportunities as we can related to anything through Hertfordshire Constabulary. We have a close connection with as well, and seeing if they've got any opportunities for us. And then, like I said, we try and develop the technical skills within college as well. So on the course, we try and do as much practical, simulated stuff as well as sort of theory-based learning as well. So yeah, we try and find placements as much as possible. We target sort of about 37 hours across the year that students are required to do some placement, and then we sort of do what's called skill-based learning. We call it Bravura Skills, which is about 100 hours, 120 hours across the year, where we try and develop sort of through master classes and specialist lessons around the actual technical skills that which will be useful.
Sure. Okay. I mean, Vicky, I'm guessing work experience is very difficult to offer just because of the nature of the work, isn't it?
Yes, unfortunately, sorry, yes, we don't offer work experience for outside, I'm afraid. However, if you are sort of trying to get your foot in the door, whereby you've applied for a volume crime examiner but haven't got in, but there's another way of getting into the police, like control room, PCSO, special, go down that route. Or civilian staff of some sort, sort of admin, you can actually, because you're inside the force, you can come out on an attachment with a SOCO. So if you're working in the department within the police, and it is of interest for you and you want to, we do offer an attachment from that side. But if you're not working within the police, then unfortunately we don't offer that service, I'm afraid.
Okay, well, again, quite understandable just due to the sheer nature of.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can assure you now, you most likely won't attend a murder. Just to put that out. But you will get to see the basics of what you would do when you first come in. So, and you know, I think that's good enough as well to sort of show. It's just unfortunately you won't get to the good stuff if you're on an attachment, but you'll get to see other bits.
Sure. Okay, right. I'm going to rattle through these questions so either of you can take these. Some of them are subject choices or course choices. So could you get into forensics with a biomedical sciences degree? Well, do you know Vicky, any of your colleagues have come into forensics through biomedical science?
I've got a feeling we do actually have a staff member that does have that. Because like I said, in relation to becoming a volume crime examiner, you actually don't necessarily need a background in forensics. You know, they do require A-level entry, and it is nice to have the science behind you because it will help you when you're in the job. However, we do have colleagues that have come from Sainsbury's and got no background at all, because we do a lot of in-house training. Well, you will be in-house trained anyway, because we're an accredited force. We follow procedure, an ISO procedure, which basically is a standard operating procedure that's already written for us that we have to follow. It's almost like a guideline of when we're recovering things, and that's kind of what you're trained to. So they prefer or can, well, you will be trained for that. So necessarily you don't need any forensic background. But for me personally, being in the job for 6 years, I probably would say it would be beneficial for you, most definitely.
Sure. Okay. We're just going through the rest of the questions on there. If I don't ask your question directly that you've submitted it, it's because hopefully we've covered it in a roundabout way earlier on. So are there jobs, Vicky, within your team that are for the psychological elements like helping victims, or is victim support very much something that the sort of the police service offers?
Yeah, no, we're not specialised in that. However, there are times where actually scenes of crime will be the first officer attending, and they might not necessarily seen a police officer before we've got there. So again, you need good communication skills. You know, requests on empathy, you know, and understanding with the victim. And that side, but you won't need anything like that at all. That's something that will come naturally when you're out and experience in life, really, on how to deal with certain situations with victims. But you're not trained in that. That's just something you'll learn.
Sure. Okay. Adam, let me ask you this one initially. When going to uni, would it be more beneficial to do a psychology bolt-on or a criminology bolt-on? Again, this might be something that you've discussed with some of your students.
Yeah, it actually doesn't often matter too much. I think from my own experience from speaking to those that have gone there, the majority of our learners that do the forensic psychology pathway will do the psychology route. Those that do just the forensics actually tend to do more the criminology route if they were to do you know, a dual course, for example. But yeah, it actually doesn't really matter too much. I think, I suppose, if you go down the psychology route, you've got opportunities where you don't have to necessarily go into forensic psychology. In the future, you can go down, if psychology is a subject, you can look at, you know, it could be children's psychology, for example, or whereas with criminology, you are sort of sticking obviously to that study of crime and the understanding of that. So if this sort of, you know, the forensic investigation and criminal investigation is what you're interested in, then you would probably say that criminology is the one you'd probably want to partner with it more.
Yeah. Okay. And then the question: if I got a degree apprenticeship in chemistry, would that set me up to then go and work in a forensic lab? I think we've probably covered that, Vicky. But again, any degree in chemistry, forensic labs?
Oh yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's always going to be beneficial because you know, you're going to have the knowledge of what techniques they use within the lab, and that's always going to be, you know, a good thing, isn't it? So again, I would recommend it. It would work.
Yeah. Okay. And this one very much for you, Vicky. When you're at the crime scene, what are the main bits of evidence that you're looking for?
So our first main bit is DNA. So that obviously incorporates blood as well. So that will be our first priority, and we will deal with DNA before anything else, purely because of the environment that it might be in, and just to limit as much anti-contamination or any sort of contamination it might have surrounding it. So DNA is our main priority, DNA and blood.
Okay. I mean, I guess it depends what sort of thing you're going to as well. When
Yeah,
you were
exactly.
Yeah, so if you went to a road collision, which I know is where you started, what were the sort of things that you were looking for then, or were there things that you you were trained to pick up on straight away?
So road collisions is a little bit different because they're actually trained in a different way than perhaps we are in scenes of crime, because they have a lot of technical equipment that allows them to look at speed and that kind of thing, dimensions and stuff. But if we're going to a collision, then obviously the first thing is preserve life, if that can happen. And then it would be down to the forensic collision team, which is not us, unfortunately. They are a different forensic team. They will obviously look at trackers, tyre marks in the road, the actual damage itself. We would look, if we were going, we would maybe look at paint transfer if there's another vehicle involved, but it's left the scene. If you're looking at someone in an RTC that maybe has been run over, then we would look at gathering if there's any body tissue, hair, blood, that kind of thing. So yeah, again, it can vary. So even if your car's been nicked off your drive or something, or your window's been smashed, we'd be looking at things differently. If we've got a suspect, then we'd be looking at getting trace evidence. So we'd be looking at glass samples and that kind of thing. So yeah, your evidence recovery just completely varies on what your scene type is like.
Sure. Okay. And then, do the people who work in the labs get involved in the case, or are they purely there to examine the evidence provided from yourselves?
They do get involved, mainly on, again, major crime. So we have had the chemical lab go out to help see if they can recover a fingerprint, and what would be a better technique than perhaps what we would do at the scene. So yeah, of course they do come out, and obviously then we get blood pattern analysis that comes out if they're required. So yeah, we can get, they can come out if needs be. Footwear again will come out if we've come across something that we're not 100% sure about. That they're available if needed. But like I say, it's very rare, but with major crime, we do tend to use them as a resource to come out and help.
Sure. Okay. And then, well, it's a bit of a flip question today. Does your company or does your team do any analysis of evidence, or do you just send it on to the technicians?
Not really. I mean, we do look at FRD, so finger ridge detail, and it's down to our experience and our knowledge on whether or not we feel that it has sufficient detail for us to take. So you are trained in that area, which again, if you do forensic course, you'll have more of an insight of fingerprints. So you'll look to see, if there is sufficient detail that the Fingerprint Bureau would be able to use to give an ident back to a particular person. So that's probably as close as we get, really.
Sure. Okay. And then the final question I've got on my dashboard here is, how many different types of forensics teams are there? I mean, is it quite simple because it's your team that go out to the scenes and then the other technicians who work in the labs, or is it a little bit more nuanced than that?
So yeah, so we are separate, although we work under the same branch, I guess, in the SSU, which is the Scientific Service Unit. We are different. So scenes of crime are purely to go out to the scene, and then you have your lab, which is away from the station, because we're based in the actual police stations. Your more sort of chemical, footwear and fingerprints, they're based up in HQ, and yeah, so they're sort of their own team, individually as well. So you've got the chem lab technicians, they will be in their own sort of base, fingerprint their own sort of base. So yeah, we are separate really, but we communicate with one another and have a rapport with one another if we need help.
Sure. Okay. Right. Fine. Well, look, we're about to conclude. I mean, the question that I wanted to know, Vicky, though, and Adam, I'm interested to get your thoughts on this, to share these as well. There are so many television programs that focus on crime scene investigations, forensics. Are they helpful? I mean, are for people to watch to get an idea of what they like, or are they just so unrealistic and dramatised for the purpose of TV?
Do you want me to go?
Yeah, you go
Yeah,
first.
that's how realistic they are, Vicky.
Sorry, Adam. A massive problem for us, to be fair, a real problem, because it gives people the idea that we can get more than actually what we can get. You know, there's this sort of preconception that, you know, if somebody touches something very quickly, we're going to be able to get something off it and give a full profile of an offender. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen. You know, we have to think of the service, the environment that is in. You know, if it's a door handle, we're taking DNA from it. Well, hold on a minute, the door handle, there's 5 people living in the address. You know, lots of people are touching it. You know, it's very difficult for us then to get a singular profile from it. We'd end up just getting loads. So yeah, sometimes it hasn't helped. We have to explain that to our victims as well, because you do get victims that will follow you around their house and say, oh, that, you know, can you get this? Can you get this? And it's lovely that they've taken interest, but very disappointed faces when you leave, when you're like, actually, I can't do that, I'm afraid. But it is what it is. It's purely for entertainment, isn't it? There are some things that we see that actually is real. I don't know if you're aware, but 24 Hours in Custody is probably a good one to watch. That really highlights some really good cases actually within our area. So that is our Triforce. So you'll come across jobs in Cambridgeshire, Hertfordshire and Bedfordshire. So if you're interested in it, it also gives a great insight to police officers as well, and the detective side of it, which again is fascinating as well in itself, and something of interest. You know, another route to get into, because you do sit with forensics and talk with them, and it's quite a nice rapport as well. You know, I'd highly recommend, if you get a chance, to check out some of those on Catch Up if you can.
Sure. Well, that was going to be my next question, was are there programs that are better than others? But you've answered that. Adam, I mean, do you hear your students talking about, oh, I watched so-and-so yesterday, and then trying to relate it to their assignments?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we do, obviously, alongside a lot of forensic, we do the actual criminal investigation as well. And 24 Hours in Police Custody is one I often use. We do things like interview techniques. So, you know, students have to learn about cross-examination interviews, that sort of thing as well. So we often use 24 Hours as sort of, well, personally, I use that as a go-to, because, like you said, it's one that students can see, particularly in this area, as, you know, as one that's related when they start seeing the towns and villages that they live in cropping up. It sparks their interest. But yeah, I mean, to be honest, with even some of the fictional stuff, although it might not be realistic and it does perhaps give a different interpretation as to what forensic officers do, it has actually recently just driven such a huge boost in interest. And like I said, the last 2 to 3 years, we've seen massive increase in students looking into this area, or is this sort of career pathway. So in that regard, it's been really good.
If it makes oh, sorry, I was just going to add on to Adam's in relation to what he was saying about the interest. We had a recruitment for VCSEs last year. We had 500 recruits, as in 500 applications. That's quite a lot. Bearing in mind, probably about 4 or 5 years ago, we might get 2, and then we've literally got to get them down to about 12. So you can imagine the process of that. There is a lot of interest in this type of work at the moment, which is good to see.
Yeah, the final question really, from a Hertfordshire perspective, or include Cambridgeshire and Bedfordshire in there, is there demand, Vicky? Do you kind of look around the office and think we could really do with a lot more people here because there's so much work on, or too many of you? Is it something you would encourage young people to look at, knowing that this is a career that there's going to be demand for them with?
Absolutely. It's a career that's, you're never going to be well, we're never going to have criminals off our street, are we? So it's always going to be flowing. You know, unfortunately, as much as we'd love to live in a society where no crime is taking place, it's never going to happen. And our job, you know, relies on that. You know, so it's yeah, we can always deal with more, and I think that goes for the police side as well in relation to their resources. You know. We can always deal with more scenes of crime and with more police, really.
Sure. Okay. So look, just before we conclude, just want to remind everyone that's watching this, if you've been watching it live, really appreciate all the fantastic questions that you submitted. And I really hope that we've managed to answer those for you. If you're not familiar with our HOP website, do have a look at it and have a look at our social media channels as well. The QR code on your screen at the moment will take you through to our library of virtual encounters. So we've recorded about 70 of these, very similar structure to the one that we've done today. We've done careers in policing, we've done it a couple of times actually, so perhaps that's the side of it that you're really interested in, then you'll find that video on there as well. Do share it with your family and friends as well. I can guarantee there is something on there for absolutely everyone. There's a career on there that someone will be interested. But just some closing comments from our panelists who have been fantastic. So first of all, Adam, just explain to everyone, if they are thinking about whether there is perhaps as a pre-GCSE option, where can they go to find out more about the courses that you offer? And I guess equally North Herts and Oakland's the same.
Yeah, so of course, just jump onto our website, so westarts.ac.uk. We've got some information on there just about the different pathways. Like I said, some further information about the difference between forensic and criminal investigation, and whether it's forensic and criminal investigation with psychology if they want to do that. And there's information on there about pathways and career prospects as well on there and what they will study. I'm sure that the other colleges have got similar information as well. We've also got some upcoming open days as well, where we will have some we'll have some sort of mock crime scene set up as well, and prospective students can come and get involved.
Sure. And then Vicky, just any closing thoughts on you? So again, if you were 15 years old, why would forensics be the career for you?
Why would it be my career? Just purely just how rewarding it can be to help assist someone who's unfortunately been a victim of crime, you know, and going out to these scenes and meeting people and gathering evidence that you've sought, that you've found, to help assist in a case whereby we've managed to get it through the justice system, and then we've got conviction. You can't get better than that, when especially nowadays, you know, well, not even nowadays, you know, but there are some not very nice people out there, and when we get convictions on it, it's very rewarding in certain offences.
Sure. Okay. Well, that sounds like great advocacy for this career. So, look, Vicky, thank you so much for your perseverance as well and trying to get on. I'm sorry that we can't see you, but we can hear you. You've given some fantastic information across there.
Sorry,
very inspirational.
Sorry, Gareth. Can I just also add, even as you can specialise in other areas when you join us. So if you've got an interest in fire, if you've got an interest in sort of archaeology, DVI, which is disaster victim identifications, we do also go training for that as well if you highlight that that's your interest. So a lot of us in SOCOs are DVI trained, so that's disaster victim identifications. And some of us are dealt with in fire investigations, which then makes us a fire expert. So we're not necessarily required to bring in the fire service. It would be us that would be allocated, and we would then be sent to court as a fire expert. So there are avenues as well that you can go down when you are a scenes of crime officer if something else is of interest for you.
Sure. Okay, well, you're continuing to sell this career. I wish I was 15. You really send it to me. So Adam and Vicky, thanks so much for giving up your time and for sharing some experience with us. I really appreciate that. We hope that all of you watching this, whether you're watching it live, whether you're watching it back on our YouTube channel, have found it informative as well. And we wish you the very best with your future career decisions. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.